Okay, so here we're going to work on the backflow testing project. So as usual, write down our name here. And our PIN number. And then what I like to do is I'll keep this paperwork away from where we're working because there will be lots of water going everywhere. So first we're going to test the double check valve assembly. Okay, so there are some instructions in here. All right, and there's a little picture of our testing kit. So I'm going to leave the paperwork and the pencil here so that way it doesn't get wet, and I'm going to show you, we're going to go over here to our backflow testing setup. So besides the paperwork and a writing utensil, you'll need a flathead screwdriver and the Apollo test kit, which is provided by the college for you to use during this project. So what we want to do is we want to have this testing kit somewhere close in height towards in comparison to our backflow device that we're testing. Okay, so this is the double check valve assembly. That's the one we're working on. Usually it has caps on it. Okay, so we just take the caps off of it and we'll get started. So we're going to have water coming in here, and this is going to basically mimic the water service coming in. So water comes into the testing device, okay, and this will be coming into the building, and then this is the building that way. Okay, so directional flow is going this way. So what we're going to do is we notify the maintenance guy or whoever's in charge at the building that we're shutting the building down to do our annual backflow test. So shut down the building, and first things first is we're going to bleed all these test cocks. So these test cocks are in order between 1 to 4. Okay, so this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Okay, we have a check valve in here and we have a check valve in there, which I'm going to go into more greater detail in the classroom with you guys. So first things first is we start bleeding them. So just put your hand over top of it like an umbrella. Okay, don't force it closed because then you'll end up spraying yourself or someone else. So just like that, open it up a little bit and just direct the water downwards. There we go. And bleeding them all out, taking the air out of them, whatever dirt might be in there, because you don't want that dirt to end up in your test kit. So bleed them all out. You got a little bit of air in there. Perfect. Okay, so now we are ready to begin the test. So first thing you're going to do is forget about these knobs on the back for the way I'm going to show you guys how to test it. We're just going to use these 3 knobs on the front. So we have the black knob, which is basically going to be our drain. The red knob, which is connected to our red hose, which is the high hose. And the green knob, which is connected to the low hose. So what you're going to do with this is you're going to take your black hose here, and you're just going to drop it into a bucket so that way we don't have water going everywhere. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll empty out this bucket. That way it's easier to hear when you're flushing stuff. So for the first test here, or the first section of this test, is we are going to close all these knobs here. And we are going to hook up the high hose, or the red hose, to test cock number 1. Open that up. Okay. And what we're going to do is not focus on the big gauge here, which is what we'll be using for the most of the testing. We're going to take a look at this little guy down here. So what we're checking for right now is static line pressure. So right now, as you guys can see, our static line pressure is 50 psi. Okay, so that's the amount of pressure that's coming into the building. So what we're going to do, head over to the paperwork, write down our static line pressure, 50 psi. Okay, so heading back over here, we're going to close test cock number 1, open up the black knob here and the red, drain the pressure out. Perfect. Okay, so now open up all of these guys. So the next step now is going to be checking the spring tension loss for check valve number 1. So we take high hose, connect that to test cock number 2, low hose or the green hose to test cock number 3. Make sure you don't cross thread them, and they just go on finger tight. There's no need to use pliers or anything like that. So black hose is in the bucket there. All of our knobs are open. Open test cock number 2, which is connected to the high hose. Open test cock number 3, which is connected to the low hose. And it's bleeding out. As you can see, the water is filling up the bucket. Okay, bleeding out the test kit here. So now all we're going to do now is close the red knob here. And you'll watch the gauge go upwards. Close the green knob. And you're going to watch the gauge come back down, and we're going to want to stop anywhere between 1 to 5. So if we're less than 1, that check valve fails. If we're greater than 5 for this particular testing device, that check valve fails. Okay, so we're sitting at 2 psi. Ideally we'd want to wait 2 minutes, but for the purpose of this video, we're just going to go with 2 psi. So leaving everything the way it is, head back over to the paperwork. Spring tension loss for check valve number 1, 2 psi D, 2 psi difference. Okay. So now close test cock 2. Make sure that's nice and closed. These are little ball valves without handles on them, right? So you're going to want your screwdriver to be at 3 and 9, and that's shut off. 12 and 6 is all the way open. So open your high and your low all the way, so that way we don't get soaked. Okay, so now we're just going to move these hoses over one. So low hose or green hose to test cock number 4. Red hose or high hose to test cock number 3. Okay, so open our high, turning our little test cock ball valve so that our ends here are at 12 and 6. And as you can see, we're draining into the bucket. Opening up test cock number 4. Coming back over here. Closing high hose first. Gauge jumps up. Closing the low hose or the green hose. And our gauge comes back down, and it's going to settle at 2 psi again. Actually, we'll go with 2.1 for that one. It's important to be accurate during this, so we're in between 2 and 2.2, so we're going with 2.1. Now writing down 2.1. So, I'm going to close test gawk 3, close test gawk 4, open our high hose, open our low hose, disconnecting the hoses from the device. Just leave those on the floor to drain. Opening the water back up to the building. And that's it. Put your little dust caps back on. And that device is done. So after that, you have successfully tested a double check valve assembly, okay, or DCVA. Okay, this is a watts one, but that doesn't really matter too much. You test them all in the same way.